Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Metzia, page 98b, top of the page with the word Shoel, Chada, Lo Haya, Dvarim Me'olam, etc. In other words, the borrower said to the owner, with regard to one of the cows that you claim, this matter never occurred, as I never took that cow from you. And as for the cows that I did not take, that died, with regard to one of them, yes, I admit that it was a cow that was being borrowed, that died. But the other cow that died, I do not know whether it was the cow that was being rented that died, and so the cow that is still alive is the one that was being borrowed, or whether the cow that was being borrowed died, and so the cow that is still alive is the one that was being rented. Because the bailee admits to part of the claim and denies another part of the claim, he is required to take an oath in order to be exempt from the rest of the claim, as he concedes that he does not know what happened. He is unable to take such an oath. The halacha is that since he is unable to take an oath, he must pay for all three cows. The Mishnah teaches the bailee. I used to know a little dog named Bailey. Cutest little dog. It's a Shih Tzu. Bailey. She was born in Parshas Karach. That's also my Parsha. Parshas Karach. Had the same sign. Connected a lot. I believe she was born in 2005 and passed away in 2020, Gansia. Right before COVID. Valentine's Day 2020. The Mishnah teaches the bailee rented one cow and borrowed another one. The owner says with certitude, the borrowed cow is the one that died. And the renter says with certitude, the rented cow is the one that died. In this case, the renter takes an oath that the rented cow is the one that died, and then he is exempt. The Gemara asks, but why? Why should he take an oath? That which the owner claimed from him, he did not admit to at all. And that which the bailee admitted to, the owner had not claimed from him. In order to be required to take an oath, the bailee must admit to part of the owner's actual claim. Ula said, the Mishnah is referring to a case where the owner required the bailee to take another oath by extending the oath that he had already required him to take. To Amarle, the Gemara elaborates, for example, this is a case where the owner said to him, take an oath to me, in any event, that the cow died naturally and not as a result of your negligence. The owner has a right to demand such an oath, and since the bailee is made to take an oath that the cow died naturally, that oath can be extended such that he also be made to take an oath that it was the cow that was rented that died. The Mishnah concludes, if this one says, I do not know what happened, and that one says, I do not know what happened, then they divide the disputed amount. The bailee is liable to pay for only half the value of the cow. The Gemara asks, in accordance with whose opinion is this? It is in accordance with the opinion of Sumches, who says, when there is property of uncertain ownership, the parties divide it equally between them. Boi Rabbi Abba Bar Mamo, she'ela b'baylim Chadash, she'ela b'baylim Mahu. I think this is eventually going to result in a teku. I can see it a few lines from now. And for those who've been watching my channel for a while, know that I've been documenting all the tekus in Shas. Because when Mashiach comes, we'll have all the tekus answered. Verstehst Yiddish? Are you understanding Yiddish or not? When the Messiah is going to come, they're going to answer all the tekus. Is this not something to be excited about, Ganze? You don't want to answer all the tekus? 150 teku Shabbos. The last take we asked was on the 150th day of the year. You think that's not, there's no cheshbon to that? Do you know what 151 is? Have you heard of 151? Rabba Bar Mama raises the dilemma. I'm back to the dilemma. That was from many years ago. Rabba Bar Mama raises the dilemma. If one borrowed a cow, together with borrowing the services of his owner, and then, before returning the cow, he rented the cow from the owner without borrowing the services of his owner, what's the halacha? Okay, so we got this here, boys. Is everyone understanding what's going on? Abba Bar Mama raises a dilemma. If one borrowed a cow together with borrowing the services of his owner, and then before returning the cow, he rented the cow from the owner without borrowing the services of his owner, what's the halacha? So you have yesh v'yesh over here. Do we say the borrowing stands by itself and the renting stands by itself? In other words, they are two independent transactions, and so the bailee is liable for any mishap that occurs during the renting period, as the owner's services were not borrowed by him during that time, or perhaps the subsequent renting is related to the prior borrowing and is extension of it. It could be said that the renting is related to the borrowing because a renter is liable for theft and loss, as is a borrower. Perhaps the liability resulting from renting that immediately follows a period of borrowing is a downgraded form of the liability undertaken at the start of the period of borrowing. If so, then in this case, since the bailee bore no liability during the borrowing period, as the cow was borrowed while the owner was providing his services to the borrower, the bailee will not bear liability during the rental period. If you say that in such a case the subsequent renting is related to the prior borrowing and is an extension of it, then in the reverse case, when one rented a cow together with borrowing the services of his owner, and then before returning the cow, he borrowed it from the renter without borrowing the services of his owner, what's the halacha? Do we say that the subsequent borrowing is certainly not related to or an extension of the prior renting, as a borrower undertakes a higher level of liability than a renter? Or perhaps, oy dilma, since the subsequent borrowing is partially related to the prior renting, as the borrower is liable for theft and loss just as a renter is, it is considered as though it were related entirely to it, and is an extension of it. Consequently, the exemption of using an item together with its owner's services also applies to the subsequent borrowing. If you say in such a case, we do not say that since the subsequent borrowing is partially related to the prior renting, it is considered as though it were entirely related to it, and as extension of it, then in a case where one borrowed a cow, together with borrowing the services of its owner, and then, before returning the cow, he rented it from the owner without borrowing the services of its owner. And then, at the end of the renting period, he again borrowed it without the owner's services. What's the halacha? Do we say that the second period of borrowing returns to its original place? In other words, it is the third period in which one borrowed the cow essentially a continuation of the first period? Or perhaps the period of renting serves as an interruption in the middle of the two periods of borrowing, such that the third period cannot be seen as a continuation of the first period. Similarly, in another case, one rented a cow together with borrowing the services of the owner. And then, before returning the cow, he borrowed it from the owner without borrowing the services of its owner. And then, at the end of the borrowing period, he again rented it without borrowing the services of the owner. What's the halacha? Do we say that the second period of renting returns it to its original place? In other words, is the second period essentially a continuation of the first period, or perhaps the period of borrowing serves as an interruption in the middle of the two periods of renting, such that the third period cannot be seen as a continuation of the first period? Teiku. The Gemara concludes all these embachana duty dilemmas, or just all these dilemmas, that's my own thing, embachana duty. Just, the Gemara concludes that all these dilemmas shall stand unresolved. And this, as I'm following the Sofer, written by Rabbi Aharon Yehoshua, Pessin of Ramat Beit Shemesh, who wrote a book that was published in the year 2006, Tufshin Samach Hey, I believe it is. Right. He published this book. It's called Teiku. That's the year that 404 came out. Oh my goodness. It came out that year also. It's another proof that Teiku has to do with the Mashiach Ganze. At any rate, this is the 100, according to his book, this is the 150th Teiku in Talmud Bavli, to be followed by the Mishnah, Torah, and we'll continue the Mishnah, and then we'll call it a day. Daf 98. By the way, 98 is Gematria Lubavitch, if you do English Gematria. Did you know that? Lubavitch is Gematria 98 in regular English Gematria, simple Gematria. A is 1, B is 2. Zok the Mishnah, Zok the Heilige Mishnah, Shai also part of a Shil Chaloi Biad Benoi Biad Avdoi Biad Shluchoi O Biad Benoi Biad Avdoi Biad Shluchoi Shushoy Lemeisa Potter Amador Shal Shachli Biad Beni Shalchali Biad Beni Biad Avdi Biad Shluchi Biad Bincha Biad Avdach Biad Shluchi או שיום המשיל הרי למשל ביד בני ביד עבדי ביד שלוחי או ביד בנך ביד עבדך ביד שלוחי שמנה שואל לך בשביל 15 חייב וכן שמחזיר. Okay, we're going to finish the Yamad and know the mission, so let's continue. In the case of one who borrowed a cow and the lender sent it to the borrower by the hand of his son or by the hand of his slave or by the hand of his agent or by the hand of the borrower's son or by the hand of a slave, or by the hand of the agent of the borrower, and it died on the way, the borrower is exempt because the period of borrowing begins only once the cow reaches his domain. Fair enough. Simple, reasonable, logical. The borrower said to the lender, send it to me by the hand of my son, or by the hand of my slave, or by the hand of my agent, or by the hand of your son, or by the hand of your slave, or by the hand of your agent. Or in a case where the lender said explicitly to the borrower, I am sending it to you by the hand of my son, or by the hand of my slave, or by the hand of my agent, or by the hand of your son, or by the hand of your slave, or by the hand of your agent. And the borrower said to him, send it as you have said. And then he sent it. And then it died on the way. Then the borrower is liable to pay the lender the value of his cow. Since the borrower agreed to the cows being brought... Who talks like that? Since the borrower agreed to the cows being brought to him... I know. Since the borrower agreed to the cows being brought to him by the hand of another... He bears liability from the moment the cow... You know what it is? It was Elaine's boss. Elaine from Seinfeld. The guy who had the textile company that, very dapper, distinguished older gentleman. Since the borrower agreed to the cows being brought by him by the hand of another... He bears liability from the moment the cow is transferred in that person's possession. That's how. Yeah. That's yeah. And so. By the way, it's 1246 right now. Elaine is Gematria 46. By the way, and just Derech Agav. And so too, this is the halacha at the time when the borrower returns to the lender. Is Elaine 46? I'm going to check it right now. I'm going to check it because this is Gematriona. Elaine, yes, it's 46. In English ordinal, confirmed it is 46, and it's 1246 right now. I said Elaine's boss, Elaine from Seinfeld. So, right, also, yeah. Let's see here. That's crazy, dude. This is the Or HaGanuz. If you watch this I call this the Or HaGanuz. It's everything. It's mamish everything. Seinfeld notwithstanding. And so too, this is the halacha at the time when the borrower returns to the lender. The borrower is absolved of liability. He only wants the cow transferred to the lender itself. And some lender agreed to. Okay. And so too, this is the halacha at the time when the borrower returns. In Wednesday's past, this would have been far over the riboy or. When you hit the threshold of riboy or, then your nervous system is already affected. A few years ago, at the point right now, would have really hit the riboy or threshold, but since the capacity is bigger now, you can hold more light. Versteht Yiddish? Versteht Yiddish Ganze? Okay. And so too, this is the halacha at the time when the borrower returns to the lender, and the borrower is absolved of liability only once the cow is transferred to the lender himself, or to someone who the lender agreed will bring it to him. To be continued on page 99, which is Gematria Rapture. In English, Gematria.